back to the social media derby. How's it going, Jonty? You all right, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Hasn't been a crazy week in terms of football. But we've got some really interesting topics. So looking forward to talking about them.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a dead week, hasn't it? Because obviously just transfer stuff going on, but you had international. You've had the internationals, haven't we, for the last couple of weeks, and obviously the
Yeah,
Nations League ending and snooze fest matches all over the shop. So it hasn't been the most eventful. Just lots
yeah,
of
snooze
transfers.
match. Yeah. A lot of one-sided England results that are gassing everyone up.
Yeah, exactly. England always looking. It's always the qualifier level England when they just slap everyone up and then give us all hope, and then when we get to the tournament and play someone decent, flop like we normally do. But I guess
Exactly.
the biggest breaking news is look what I've found. Man's found a Carabao.
Get out of it. I hope it tastes terrible.
Crack that open. Have a little bit of Carabao.
Yeah, you're not going to see that one
But
again for a while, so it's all right,
yeah,
mate.
I've got to drink it in, as they say, while we still are the Carabao Cup holders, isn't it? Before next season starts, because they just did a draw and they're starting
Yeah,
with a new season. So we're not going to be cup holders for too much longer, probably. But anyway, let's get into some of this transfer chat because that's really main stuff we're going to talk about on today's and on this week's episode. Something really interesting has been going on over the last, like, I don't know, maybe 4 to 6 weeks with a lot of transfers going to Saudi Arabia. A lot of players moving either at the end of their contracts on big deals, or a lot of people's dead wood, or just kind of older players, or even Ruben Neves has obviously recently gone there as well. So, off the back of, I guess they've shown interest in Thomas Partey, which was a bit unexpected. They've shown interest in David De Gea as well, which is throwing a bit of a spanner in the works for our contract renewal stuff with him. So I think we should just have a little chat about it, really, because it's a big kind of trending topic in the world of football at the moment. What's going on basically with Saudi, whether it's the new China, whether they're actually setting up a sustainable league, whether it's wrong or right. What have you been kind of taking? What have you been making of the whole situation? Have you been watching it closely?
yeah. I mean, like, obviously, I'm not watching it crazy closely. I don't watch the Saudi Arabian league. Um, But outside of that, obviously, I've been seeing all the transfer rumors. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like anything crazy new to me. It seems
Mm-hmm.
like we've kind of been here before with other countries, like you said, kind of the MLS have done this before. They still continue to do it to this day. I mean, like Messi's not going there for no reason, is he? China obviously did it up until a point, up until when they started changing laws around that, and I think we can get into that a little bit later. But obviously, some of the ideas around why those laws were changing were pretty good and kind of stopped this from happening. So when we talk about Saudi Arabia and we talk about they're nicking all these players, this and that, I think for the most part people aren't too worried because they've been going after like kind of deadwood or going after players that were big names but not really at their peak anymore. But I think over the last few weeks, or maybe the last week or so, they've started going after players a bit younger, going after players that are still technically in their prime. And I think that's what's starting to get people a little bit worried now that they're getting, players in their prime, good players. Like, Ruben Neves is definitely not over the hill. He's still got a lot to contribute to the league. I saw a lot of potential or, potential transfers where people were looking at buying him and so on. So I think that's what's really getting people worried right now. I mean, from your point of view, how do you see it? Do you think it's a good thing for football? Is it any different from what we've seen before?
I don't really think so, man. I think it's a really interesting convo because obviously I've seen Jamie Carragher and a few other people, kind of start a bit of like, a bit of outrage train where everyone's like, oh no, we need to be careful of the Saudi league. We need to stop it. As soon as they start, like you said, showing interest in younger players or players more in their prime, then, it's a threat to our league, which I kind of understand because obviously you don't want to lose your best players. Um, but I think it's a wild overreaction. Like for the most part, like you said, they've gone for players who are either at the end of their kind of the tail end of their career or are completely surplus to requirements at their team. So they're kind of doing our league a favour by getting rid of players that are not going to play, but suck loads of cash out of the bigger teams in our league. So I don't know, man. It's a bit of one of those kind of fake outrage type situations where everyone starts to get a bit jittery because they see another league throw money around, and we don't feel that comfortable about it in this country unless our teams are the one spending 80 million on Harry Maguire or 75 million on Pepe or 100 million on Grealish. Those transfers are nuts. Like, we contribute to this same outrageous transfer system as much as any league in the world. And in fact, if you go to Spain, France, Belgium, Holland, Portugal, I'm sure. How do you think they feel when we come and cherry pick all of their best players? We don't go and buy their old cast offs and their, players who are in 35 years old at the tail end of their career, do we? We buy their best up and coming players, or the players who they actually don't want to lose from the league. So there's a bit of hypocrisy involved in it, isn't there? I mean, let's be real. The only players that I think people are maybe slightly sad to see the back of probably are, is Ruben Neves. It probably would be Thomas Partey if you lost him. I don't quite think he's over the hill. He's still kind of, you could argue he's still in his kind of prime, if not, kind of heading towards maybe the back end of his prime. But yeah, it's a hard one. I think there's a lot of things at play, but I really just think it's very, very similar to China. Like, we discussed it a little bit off camera. People tend to kind of add a lot of sauce to these discussions when it is, China or Middle East or a country where they've got a very different political system to ours. We start to add, layers of kind of sinister types of motives behind why their leagues start doing it. But if I'm honest, I think Saudi Arabia did really well in the World Cup. The World Cup was hosted in the Middle East. They had the biggest fan base across all the different nations at that World Cup. They've got a big portion of their population, which is under 40. They love football. And they're just trying to basically start to monetize it. And instead of spending loads of money to watch other leagues, they decided, let's just bring some better quality players to our league and try and create our own kind of own ecosystem. And I think something really similar happened in China. But then obviously what happened was it got abused. And you start to see mediocre players get hundreds of thousands a week, and clubs were not really managing their money very well. So like you said, they brought in necessary laws to try and protect their own, national team's interests. I know, for example, in China, they ring-fenced the goalie position. So you could only have Chinese goalies because they basically recognized that was a position where they weren't producing a lot of talent naturally. So they didn't want to try and damage that by bringing in foreign goalies. So, there are a lot of things out there saying that, China stopped it because, the president decided that it wasn't a public interest thing anymore. So they were just going to leave it. But actually, it was for the betterment of their team and for their local kind of grassroots infrastructure, that they didn't have a million foreigners in the league who didn't really care about the country or the interest of, the domestic league, and were just there to get money, of which there were lots of players that were, that in that league that behaved that way. So I don't think it's a big problem, man. I think obviously there are a lot of conspiracies out there because this kind of all kicked off in the Premier League because they were looking to buy basically all of Chelsea's dead wood. And, we talked about it off air. 4 of the clubs are owned by the Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia, who are kind of invested in Chelsea's parent company. So obviously that kind of looks a bit fishy, but as long as those players aren't being sold for like way above market value, how can you prove something dodgy is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to interrupt a little bit there. I think on that note, why is I am the first person to say I don't want Chelsea to be able to do the things that they're doing in the transfer market, right? The whole 10-year contract stuff that they were getting away with last year, now they've changed it to 6 or whatever. I'm the last person to want that to be able to be done. But at the same time, like, we're talking about all of this while Man City have all their charges from basically essentially cooking their books for a long period of time. We've got Newcastle, like every single shirt sponsor that they've got is going to be Saudi Arabia focused. They're all getting money from that area and they're using it to better their teams. So when we talk about, like Chelsea they're selling all their dead wood to Saudi Arabia so that they can, cook their books. Again, we're talking about something that I know we have to say allegedly here because there's obviously nothing confirmed yet. but what is suspected to be a practice of many of the teams that are owned by those types of like state owned or whatever else investment funds and so on. This is happening all over the game. So I don't see why people are, crying about that. I get, again, I don't want Chelsea to be able to do what they're doing, but I feel like this has been happening for a long time. And if you look at the whole like feeder and parent club kind of stuff that's been going on as well, that's always been a part of the game too, where teams were going in, creating like financially beneficial relationships with smaller teams and nicking all their great players and sending all their crappy youth players over there to get practice. So that part of it is a little bit strange to me, why people are up in arms about that. And I think from my point of view, you kind of touched on it about the whole China thing, right? I think when we see countries like China or countries like Saudi Arabia or Qatar or whoever it is start investing loads into the game, I think what gets people's backups is they've been investing loads into the game, right? Like the teams that own, Premiership teams have been investing loads and loads into the game to get better, and it's been clearly working because obviously the Premier League is now seen as like the top Premier division to play in, and it's because of not only the quality of football is really good, but also the money's really good, right? Even the lower league or the lower table type teams are able to give players way more than they'd get in parts of Spain or parts of France or wherever else, right? And so the whole thing about that is they're now seeing like China or Saudi Arabia, and they're thinking, oh wait, they've got too much money now. So essentially, they're just playing their same own game, right? It's the same game Premier League teams have been playing. It's the same game that PSG have been playing. Is now they're a little bit afraid because they're like, oh wait, these guys have zero financial ceiling. They can go as far as they want. They don't have all of the UEFA rules that are stopping them from doing this, that, and the other. They can do whatever they want, pay whoever they want, as much money as they want, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it kind of seems a little bit hypocritical from that point of view. I don't think it's great for the game in general, just because of the fact that I think money is starting to ruin the game to a certain point and create massive discrepancies or like massive disparity between the top teams and the lowest teams. But I don't think any of the teams like Premier League teams that have already got loads of money invested into them can be complaining too much, because they've already been playing this game and now maybe they're seeing someone's better at that game, or somebody is able to play the same game with fewer rules to stop them. So it seems a little bit hypocritical from that point of view. But at the end of the day, right, like I think we'll have to see if Saudi Arabia continue to actually invest in their own players. Because one of the big things I saw, and I'd love to get your comment on this, right, is there was some big problem over the last few years where like Saudi players today weren't even getting paid. They were getting like back paid and getting paid late. And that's where I feel like there needs to be some rules in place to stop that, because you can't have Benzema coming in on 700 grand and then his teammates are here on 20 grand and not even getting paid. So that's where I feel like maybe we need to have global rules, not just European rules or whatever else, but there needs to be global rules around football about what you can and cannot do. And I think they need to be enforced more heavily for not just Saudi teams and Chinese teams and MLS teams, but English teams too, and French teams and Italian teams, all of them, because it's clear, I think you all agree here, it's clear that these rules are in place, but they're not fully working. We're still seeing the same stuff happen. All of the stuff that we were complaining about when Abramovich first bought Chelsea, all of the same stuff is happening. So I don't know what your take on that whole kind of disparity and the fact that Saudi players weren't even getting paid for a long spell of time last year. But to me, it just seems like there needs to be more consistent rules across the game.
No, that's true, and I swear that's what Gary Neville and what's her name, Tracy, I've forgotten her last name now, Tracy Crouch, maybe I think it was, were trying to suggest with this independent kind of adjudicator commissioner type situation, to basically ensure that the clubs have proper checks and balances and can make sure that they're financially sound. So if they want to spend loads of money, it can only be done basically once they've ensured that they've got enough capital to be able to pay all of their outgoings, their salaries, all of their overheads. Which I think is the point we were kind of touching when we talked about what kind of went a bit left in China, was you had a lot of clubs that were kind of operating a bit cowboyish, and were making sure that like their foreign stars were getting paid, but a lot of their staff and their local players weren't getting paid, or they were delayed, or there were lots of issues around kind of just basic, real simple business management that wasn't happening because of this influx of cash and kind of mismanagement and overspending in certain areas and just not having a good grasp of what was going on. And yeah, if that's already been accused in Saudi, then that doesn't really bode well for kind of this period that they're going to be entering in now, where there's more money invested in the game. But on the same, on the same side, the other side of the same coin, maybe this influx of money will help support those clubs and make sure that they are run better and they have enough money to support their local players as well as they support their foreign players. I guess the point I'm trying to make is we don't really know at the moment. It's so new, and I think everyone's kind of got PTSD because they've seen China do this, America do this, and it's not necessarily gone the way that those leagues have hoped. And there have been kind of horror stories of people either not getting paid or kind of not having a great experience abroad. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And like you said, it's very glass house vibes to be like, oh, Chelsea are doing this, blah 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 blah. Because essentially, yeah, I'm not a big fan of Todd Bowley and the 20-year contracts and all this death row record contracts and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like that, if that's a loophole in the game, like people are just complaining because we didn't make use of it or we didn't exercise those options when it was available. And it's the same thing with this Saudi thing. We can't say that Chelsea started this Saudi explosion. They got Ronaldo. They were trying to get Ronaldo for like 6 months before he even went there. They've got Benzema. They've gone for other big players. It just happens to be Chelsea have loads of dead wood and players that they're trying to shift. And naturally, if a league is spending a lot of money and trying to grow their league, you're going to speak to the agents and try and get them all interested in those players that you have. And they've got Koulibaly, Ziyech, who are not wanted and probably on really large salaries. And the Saudi teams are the only ones who are able to take that salary on. So for me, I just feel like, we have a real tendency in this country to go down the conspiracy route before actually using our brains maybe and doing the logic behind certain things. Because I guess going down the conspiracy route is easier to stomach. But I just think at the moment we have to just wait and see what happens. They're taking the players that we don't want for the most part. Let's see how it goes for them. Like maybe they're going to develop a really strong league. Maybe they're going to flop like the other countries that we just talked about. But let's just wait and see and not kind of go overboard because, I know our media loves to do that and sensationalize stuff and go just extreme one way to extreme the other way. But let's just see, man. Let's just see. Like maybe they're going to build a good league for the sake of N'Golo Kante, who I love, for the sake of a lot of other players that have gone there that I think, I hope well and I've got no bad wishes against. I hope it goes well. And at worst case, they've made a lot of money, and hopefully that they can do good stuff.
It's also nice to see just general interest coming from outside of Europe, right? We're in a very European dominated game, right? And football is a global sport. It's nice to see countries outside of Europe getting interested in it. It would be nice to not maybe break up that whole kind of European dominance of the game, but it would be nice to see some, the need for maybe like a proper Club World Cup or like a competition where we get involved with other nations outside of Europe and maybe have better competition across the globe. I definitely think that is something that needs to be addressed in football. I know Arsene Wenger said things about it before about having to build up, homegrown leagues and the fact that Europe have been stealing players from those leagues for a really, really long time. So it would be nice. I enjoy the idea of, having some good players and some good teams outside of Europe. I think the only other point I'll make on this before we move on is, there are many teams that have, let's say, owners or let's say a vested interest in another team, right? There are plenty of football teams out there now that have ownership that also own other teams. And I think that's really where the conflict of interest and all of this kind of stuff gets into it, right? Is like the whole idea of Man City and what they did. I know that everyone says about them being such a well-run club and the model for all of these, Qatari or Saudi Arabian or Chinese owners that come in and buy new teams. Man City's like the model for that. But they're also the ones that have started this whole idea of like owning many teams part of the same footballing group. And there's a lot of questions that can be raised around that, because you end up getting to a point where it's actually like collusion, right? Like in economics, in business, you're not allowed to typically do that and then also take advantage of it to improve those companies in that kind of way, right? It's seen to be, especially if they're in the exact same industry like they would be in football, right? There's a collusion element to it that I think maybe is where we need to start getting into it, right? Because the whole idea is that these teams, these 4 teams that are owned by the Public Investment Fund, also have minority interest in Chelsea, right? They own a bit of Chelsea, they own a lot of Newcastle, and that's where the whole grey area starts to come into it. And I think maybe that's the part that we need to address, the idea that you can own as many football teams as you want across different leagues and there's no problems with that. I think that's maybe the root of a lot of the issues that are coming out. And I think that's the part, I think at least, that needs to be addressed to make this a little bit more fair, right? As opposed to, as you say, sacking off all your dead wood. You mentioned a couple there. Mendy's also going as well, right? Edouard Mendy, the goalkeeper's going as well. So, and he's definitely not in his twilight years. I know he wasn't great last year, but he's a young goalkeeper, comparatively speaking. So, I think that's the last thing I'll say on it. I think it'll be interesting. We should hold our judgment for a little bit longer to see how it's going to turn out, see what the Saudi Pro League looks like in the future before we start to condemn them, and put all kinds of labels on them. Because the last thing we need is more xenophobia and racism in football, let's be honest.
Yeah. And I second your comment about it would be beautiful to see an Asian nation, come out of the dust and create a really strong football team or a strong league. The same with Africa as a continent. Asia and Africa have a long history of really top real but not necessarily top leagues, or if we ever seen an African or Asian team perform, in the real latter stages of a World Cup or something like that. And I think we deserve it. Both those continents have got huge amounts of football loving people and have provided a lot to the game of football that we love. So it would make me nothing more than happier to see a team like, even if it is Saudi Arabia, even if we've got no ties to it, it would still be beautiful to see a nation like that come out and create a really strong football legacy. The same way we love Leicester. It's again that underdog story. It'll be beautiful to see. So I second that, man, and let's just wait and see. I agree with you. They're like football conglomerate stuff that's been going on has been going on forever. I don't even think Man City started it. For example, you've got Watford and Udinese. That little group, they had about 3 or 4 teams. Before that,
the Red Bull
teams. Red Bull have got teams everywhere. I remember back in the day, United were closely linked with Antwerp, and we had a little link with them. Arsenal had other links with other Eredivisie teams. It's been going on for a long time, and I think that's something that I think could cause really, really big problems. Obviously, later down the line, it can get real sticky, and things can kind of maybe corrupt the game even further than we already kind of reached at this point. But anyway, that's enough on Saudi Arabia. Let's just wait and see, I think, and we'll probably see and kind of understand more about what's really going on and what that project looks like over the coming weeks and months. But let's chat a little bit about our teams now and the transfers that are looking likely, or maybe not looking so likely in Man United's case. So we've been heavily linked with Mason Mount now for must be almost 2 months, I'd say. It feels like forever. We put in 3 bids. The last one, 50 million plus 5. Chelsea have come back saying they want 58 plus 7. So essentially, we're a good 10 million out. There's a lot of rumours going around saying that now United have given up and we're basically going to end and halt our Mason Mount pursuit and turn our attentions to Caicedo. To be honest, I've got nothing against Mount. I know you're not really his biggest fan. But I think if this does happen, we fell backwards into the better player because Caicedo is exactly what we need to be kind of looking for in that area. And I was shocked because we've been linked with Caicedo for almost 2 years now. Before he even went to Brighton, there was really strong links that we were going to get him, in fact, ahead of Brighton for 5 million. I think it was probably around the late Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ralph Ragnick kind of times. And we didn't. Obviously, class judgment again by the Man United transfer department in not signing him. He's gone to Brighton and he's looked amazing. I think both of us will agree to that. Yeah. What do you think, Johns? I know you're not a huge fan of Mount.
Yeah.
Do you think it's worth us going up to the 58 plus 7, or because if you think about it, Caicedo is going to be a lot more, but
Well, yeah.
I think the other sticking point was Chelsea want more money up front and we want to spread it out. So essentially, if we go and get Caicedo and we pay 80 million instead of 65, but we're able to spread it out over a longer time, then obviously that's better for our summer budget
Yeah.
this year.
I
So what
mean,
do you think?
I never understood why you're going for him in the first place. Like, I I'm remembering barbecues from last year now where I was dissing Mount. He's a good player. He's still young. Was he still like 24,
24,
25?
25, yeah.
Yeah, so he's still young. I get that idea, but I mean, I never really saw why you were going for him in the first place, right? You definitely need midfielders, and you definitely need that center of midfield position outside of Bruno is probably one of your weakest positions, right, outside of your strikers. And I obviously agree that you need to build in that area, but I never really understood why you were going for Mount. I think there are better options in the market today, especially for that, 58 plus 7, 65 million that they're asking for him. And I definitely feel like Chelsea are giving you a bit of Man United tax. And I hope I don't gas up any of your fans to think that that's a real big thing all the time, because I know I've heard quite a lot of Man United fans complain about that. But I definitely feel like there is maybe Chelsea see you as more of a competitor than they do City and letting Kovacic go for 30 mil. So I think they're probably trying to rip you off a little bit. And I mean, given your track record over the last couple of years, it's a smart move to try and do that. But I definitely think you are falling backwards into a better position, or into a better player in that position, because if you're going to go for a player in that position, don't go for an English player, because you're going to get ripped off regardless because of English tax. Caicedo has looked unbelievable. He's also, I would say, probably a bit more versatile than Mount in that position. I think he's physically more of what you need in that position. I know Mount is pretty strong for his size, but I would say Caicedo is significantly better on the physical side of the ball. So I definitely think that if you can get Caicedo, you've done something great here. The issue that I see with this is you're a bit late in the game. I know that you obviously say that you've been linked with Caicedo for ages and so on and so forth, but if you think about who else has been trying to go after him this season, you are a little bit late in the game, right? Chelsea have been going after him for ages. Arsenal have been going after him for ages. I know that, some of the interest is called recently, but you're a tad late in the game here. I think Chelsea will still be the ones that probably get him. And if we do take that into account, the fact that you're not going to get Mount anymore, it looks like your interest is cooled, and Caicedo might not even come to you, what kind of position are you in now, right? So I think I would like to see you go in for a couple more players. Like, typically United are linked with everyone at some point, right? You guys are like the OG Arsene Wengers in that you kind of claim that you've been linked with everyone all the time. But I would try and spread that net a bit further, right? Like, I've been seeing teams linked with Tonali, seeing teams linked with Barella now even. You need to be looking elsewhere as well, just in case. And maybe you are, maybe it hasn't come out yet, but knowing the rumour mill and the leaks that come out of your team, I wouldn't, I would expect all of the shortlist to be leaked by this point. So I think if you can pull it off and you can get Caicedo and you don't get Mount, then you should be really, really, really happy, because I think that is the better result for you. But I don't know if you're going to get Caicedo, because they're also going to ask for quite a lot there. And again, you might get Man United tax there too, mate. So what do you think? I mean, how good do you think your chances are of getting him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's been rumours of Caicedo to Arsenal in January. He obviously put out that tweet or that Instagram post or whatever, talking about his 10 brothers and sisters and all that rubbish. So respectfully, there's obviously been other teams interested, because he looks like a really amazing player, and obviously the sample size is not huge, but that sample size is impactful. The way he played in some of those big games, and just the dominance that he had in midfield alongside McAllister, who's not really the physical one. He was more of the intricate kind of technical player of the two. For a team that I think none of us saw finishing in the top 7 or 8 or wherever they finished, I think he had such a big impact on that team, and I think the transfer fee of whatever I think is mooted to be like between 80 and 90 million. I think is a lot, but obviously, like I said, if it's spread out over installments, and more favourable installments than the Mason Mount deal, for example, then I don't think it. I think it's one of those things where it looks like, oh God, you've spent a lot of money on him now, but I think when they look at the budget sheet, which I think is the biggest problem at the moment for United, is trying to be able to stay within their FFP kind of allocation. And as long as they're able to, spread the payments over a long contract and, the installments to match it, I think we'll be okay. So from a financial standpoint, I don't think we've got a big worry around that. From kind of entering late in the day kind of thing, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because obviously Fabrizio and all the ITKs and, Ornstein and all that guys have been talking about Chelsea kind of being the ones who've kind of showed their hand for Caicedo the most in this window. I think it's always one of those things where if you've been in contact with their camp forever and you've spoken to them a lot during, the time, like you guys kind of have been with Rice, then I guess it's just one of those things where you've just got to agree the deal with Brighton. You kind of obviously probably know by speaking to the agent and being in touch with them roughly what Caicedo would want wage wise,
and it's pretty clear he wants to go. Like it's pretty
he
clear
wants to
he'll
go to a big
wherever
team.
he can.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I think Chelsea, Man United, I think personal terms you'll get those agreed. I guess my question is, do you think you're going to get that Brighton part over the line before somebody else does?
I mean, I think we've got as good a chance as any other team. Obviously, our transfer department are incompetent. We know that. It's going to be a struggle if we do. We'll probably pay 5 million more than anyone else agreed to pay, so we'll get rinsed a little bit. I think the Man United tax definitely does apply in nearly every situation, but that's not because of the club's size or it's not purely down to that. Maybe back in the day it could have been down to that. But right now, it's just because they know we've got a bunch of imbeciles in our transfer team, and they just know they'll get more money if they say that. I mean, we paid 55 million for Fred. The Shakhtar CEO came out and said he would have accepted 20 to 25, so we got rinsed on that one. We paid 80 to 85 million for Harry Maguire, a good 40, 50 million more than he was actually worth. Antony, my namesake from last season. Lisandro Martinez, as much as I love him, I've mentioned all these guys' names before, haven't I? We're rubbish in the market. Regardless of whether the player is good or not, it doesn't matter. We always overpay and we always sell players for peanuts. So I don't think it's a case of can we get Caicedo? I think we can. I think we could enter that race late, even if it isn't late or whatever, if we've been laying the groundwork and get it over the line. But I'm sure we will have paid more than probably Chelsea would have needed to, or Arsenal would have needed to. And like you said, I don't have a huge amount of confidence when we're competing against another team for a player because I don't have any strong evidence that we can beat another team to a player if there's a bit of a battle. Obviously, we beat you guys to Lisandro last year because you were interested in him. But, I think that was heavily Ten Hag tax. Like, he knew the player, they had a good relationship. So if we didn't have that, would we be able to beat someone else? I'm not sure. With Chelsea, obviously, there's obviously the fact we're playing Champions League football and they're not. They won't be playing in Europe at all, which could help. We'll probably pay more than Chelsea in terms of wages as well. So,
do you think Pochettino and the language connection might help though? Because obviously there's the South American connection there between Caicedo and Pochettino, and I've heard so many people talk about Pochettino's like character and his ability to draw players in. Do you think you maybe that will play some sort of part?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's obviously something that could play a factor. I mean, we've got a team full of South American players, so maybe the coach is not South American, but we've obviously got a bunch of Brazilians and Argentinians and other people that speak Spanish within the squad. So I don't know. I guess that could play a factor, but ultimately I hope we end this transfer window with Caicedo. There's obviously still the option to go and get Mount for free next season when his contract ends, if we still are hell bent on getting him. But I think just looking at the priorities, I think Caicedo is kind of a bigger need for our team right now, that type of midfielder, rather than a Mount. But, I'm not as against Mount as you are. So if we did end up still getting Mount, I wouldn't be I won't be absolutely livid about it. I still think he's a decent player, and within a good system that suits him, he could be maybe really effective. But I think, yeah, just the one thing that just really pisses me off about Man U transfers is you don't really get a chance to be excited about them. They always drag on way too long, and by the end, you kind of just feel like you're beaten up by the transfer, and you just want it to end.
Yeah.
Either just end in failure or end in success. Just end it. Like I don't want to keep seeing bloody Fabrizio's stupid posts that aren't actually updating anyone about anything, and just kind of just causing more angst and annoyance about the deal than anything else. So I just kind of want it to be
Yeah.
resolved, and then for us to look at other positions where we need to bring players in and look at
Sounds a little bit like
players go.
the whole Rice thing as well for Arsenal fans. This one,
Yeah, let's get into that because it's been a bit of a wild week for you guys when it comes to transfers. You've had some good news come out of the blue with Jury and Timber, and we can talk about that a bit later. You've obviously had the Kai Havertz deal now cross the line. I know you and Lincoln will be super happy about that.
Yeah, not some good news there.
Yeah, exactly, donkeys and all that. But you've had quite a lot of twists and turns with the Declan Rice stuff. So you've put in 2 bids so far for him, both been rejected. I think the latest bid was 75 million up front, 15 million add-ons, so about 90 million in total. Then, out of nowhere, a big blue shark appeared, and suddenly Man City are sniffing around the deal. Obviously, off the back of Gundogan signing his pre-contract agreement with Barcelona, they obviously now need a midfielder. And there's kind of conflicting reports in the media. Some people saying that Declan Rice is kind of agnostic and could go to Arsenal, City, United, anywhere. He's not really got preference. Some people saying that he's actually told City directly, no, I don't want you guys. I want Arsenal, so there's no point in you bidding. So they haven't put in an official bid. How do you feel about it? It's been a bit of a roller coaster week.
Yeah, I've been reading about it, and obviously, like I can't remember the name of the journalist, but he's come out and said, City are quite far along, and that was the worst thing I could hear on any day of the week. After we've been getting our hopes up with Rice for so long. And I think on the topic that you mentioned before about, like when transfers drag on for this long, it takes all of the fun out of it for a fan. And I think the worst thing that can happen is when they drag out this long and then we don't end up getting a player. And like, I guess in the Mudryk situation, it's good because he looks like he sucks. But in this situation, it would be crushing because, I mean, with Rice, I think I am playing into the whole reports of like him caring about playing time and caring about the system and the process that Arsenal are going through. So he does strike me to be a guy that does have some kind of morality in the game of football. I think what he did like in staying with West Ham, getting them a European trophy, he does seem like he's a somewhat principled guy. I don't know if I'm just like trying to figure this out in my head and make it seem like it's better than it is, but I mean, look at Calvin Phillips, right? His countryman that was doing quite well before he went there, and look at him now. So I definitely think that there is a point there of Declan Rice probably wanting to actually play first team football as much as he possibly can. And the whole idea of staying in London where he's living right now and, where he's been living for ages, I think all of that does probably culminate, in my opinion, that he's going to be choosing Arsenal over City. But the issue is there, he's not the only one that gets to make the decision, right? He gets to make, I guess, the final decision in that he can say, no, I don't want to go to your team. And, there's going to be no personal terms agreed. But the club has a massive say. And if we never come anywhere near their asking price, which has been rumoured to be 120 million or whatever, obviously that can include add-ons and whatever else. But we're already at the 3rd bid now, man. We've done 1, got immediately rejected. We've done 2, it seems to be immediately rejected. We're just going to keep on doing that thing where we keep on adding 10 million onto the price over and over again, where City might come in and just be like, yeah, we'll give you 100 million. Or we'll give you 110 with whatever add-ons there. So that's where I'm worried. I'm not worried so much about Rice and the personal terms, but a man can only go on for so long without wanting to like actually shore up his future. So he's going to be thinking, I want to get this over and done with. I need to go on holiday, right? I need to get out to IB for wherever he's going to go. Maybe link up with Jack Grealish and do some madness or something. I don't know. They don't want to be chilling throughout the whole summer waiting for this saga to keep on dragging on. And if you're Rice, you're probably thinking, oh, I've agreed with you lot. Get on with it, right? Like, you don't value me enough to buy me? Come on. We just saw Grealish go for whatever he went for last couple seasons ago. So maybe there's a point that he will become more and more unhappy if we keep longing it out with all these bids. And we know West Ham are not going to go down. Just give them the money that they want. And I'm going to sound real hypocritical here, and I can put my hand up and say my bad, because at the beginning I was like, we shouldn't be spending 100 million on anyone. But for the sake of it, the fact that we're longing it out, taking up valuable time where we could be going and trying to get somebody else, we're taking interest away from Caicedo, who we wanted from a long time ago. Just pay the money, get it over and done with, and let's move on to who we want to get next, right? We've already got Havertz, apparently, which we'll talk about on another day because I've had enough of talking about that guy. But there's the Timber deal. There's other deals that we need to get on with. So for me, if this Rice deal goes left and he ends up going to City, I'm gonna have real issues. And I brought it up on the podcast last season, right? And last week, and you guys kind of told me, yeah, like most of our deals have worked out. I still think there's something to be seen. There's a lot to be proven in that regard. And until I see these types of things getting over the line, until I see us like not messing about and not losing out to people like Mudryk and whatever else that we've done, I'm never going to feel confident. Because at the end of the day, to be the winners of the league, to be competing with City, you need to get your first choice. And that's what they've done. City come in, they get their first choice for the most part, right? And I think Arsenal, Man United are both really good examples coming in. Oh, can't get my first choice. Let's move on to somebody else now. And you end up with your third or fourth choice in that position. And yeah, sometimes it might work out. But for the most part, there's a reason why these people are your first choice. Your manager wants them first. So yeah, that's the last I'll say about it. I don't know how you're seeing it. You're probably loving it, but we need to start being serious here. Right? We paid 60 or 50, whatever million for Havertz because no one else wants him. Show me when somebody else wants a player that we can get him, that we've got the juice, we've got the money, we've got the hype around us to get these players. And if I don't see that, I'm going to be livid.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you. I feel your pain because obviously I've just said the same kind of thing about, going head to head with other clubs and not having the greatest track record. But yeah, it's a really interesting one because it seems like I do think there's some part of your worries that I think can be allayed, like when it comes to taking energy away from other deals, because it looks like you've got a couple of deals going on at the same time. You've had the Havertz one gone; it's pretty much been wrapped up now. I think the rumours were 65 million guaranteed plus 5 million add-ons or something, so could rise to 70 million, which is a big outlay if you think about it. But obviously, his age and profile obviously is what they're looking at when it comes to Chelsea being great in the market again, squeeze another 5 million out of it. But that's obviously been going on. You've got the Rice one that's been going on the whole time. You've now had, the rumours of the Timber move that are moving along quite nicely as well. There's been rumours of Romeo Lavia as well, who looks to be like the second midfielder main target instead of Caicedo, which is interesting. Because he'd probably cost a lot less, but I think his impact at Southampton, and while it's been really good, I don't think has popped quite the same as Caicedo has. Although I think he'd still be a really good signing. So it looks like you're doing a lot at the same time. So I don't think you need to worry too much about the energy part. But it just would be a major L if you've been negotiating with West Ham completely uninterrupted by yourself, had the lane wide open to just get it done. And because you've been faffing about trying to be kind of a little bit cute, and I've heard rumours about you guys trying to spread the 75 million over like 5 or 6 years or something, and essentially, give West Ham about 15, 20 million a year, when they've basically said, look, we want 100 million, half of it right now, half of it next season. They've given you very clear demands. And I think it's kind of, we joked about the Tottenham rumour where they came in and offered 50 million for Barnes and Maddison. And we said that they were being super stingy about it. Arsenal going in there with 75 plus 15, 75 spread over 60 years when West Ham want 50 now and 50 next season. It's kind of moving quite similar. And I get it. If that's your first approach, you want to try and be cheeky, that's okay. But your second bid, and then on the third bid, you know there's an outside chance that if Gundogan doesn't re-sign, maybe City will be looking. I don't know. It just feels like you've
And when you're
gone and
doing that,
played.
when you've just spent 65 on, or you're going to spend 65 on Havertz, like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah,
be
it, look,
serious here.
it looks like you've tried to be too cute, and if it explodes, you're going to have egg on your face, and it will hurt even more because off the back of last season, you were City's main rivals, and for them to gazump you to your number one target in the whole window, the person you're looking to spend the biggest fee on, and the person you've essentially been chasing since January really hard, it would stink, and it would really not
Yeah.
look great for Edu and Arteta if it doesn't go your way.
Havertz is the one that you do this play these silly games with because nobody wants him. Go and
And
do
ch-
that with him.
and you've
Don't
got
do it.
leverage, and you've got
Exactly, you've
leverage
got
with
leverage.
Chelsea. Yeah, you've got
Exactly.
leverage with Chelsea. Yeah,
Why are you doing that with Rice? They've, as you said, they've been very clear about what they want, and now that they've secured their Premier League position and now they're going to be in Europa again next season, they don't have to mess about with you. They can, they can just say what they want, and you've got to pay it, right? And at the end of the day, when you've now created somewhat of a bidding war that you've got, I mean, like, I know Bayern before never put in a bid, but we're interested. They backed out of it. City are coming in now. There's always United in the background. You guys could at any moment start saying you want this player, right? So they've created somewhat of a bidding war. They're in the advantageous position in this negotiation. It's very clear we've laid our cards on the table that he's who we want. Get it over the line. Stop messing about and get it over the line. If we lose out, if we lost out to Bayern, whatever. If you lose out to City, your main rivals last season, and what you're hoping to be your main rivals again next season. Come on, like there's other things you need to take into account here, not just the money, right? And I've seen that there are rumors of players leaving teams, this, that, and the other. You're gonna make it back. We're in a decently good financial position. Just pay for him and let's get this wrapped up and over with and move on to the next one, right? Let's have the whole summer to train with him. Let's have the whole summer to train with Havertz and Timber, whoever else we get. Let's get our business finished quickly and let's move on. That's the sign of a great team.
yeah,
Not dilly-dallying.
yeah. It's a pivotal summer for you guys, and I feel like the groundwork you've been putting in has been good. You've got yourself to a position where you just need to get things across the line, and you're just facing some challenges. Some of which I think, like you said, they're kind of self-inflicted. You could have just gone, slapped a bit more money on the Rice deal, get that done first, worry about the Havertz deal afterwards. You've got more leverage with Chelsea in that they need to sell players before the end of June. And, Havertz is a player that, like you said, is not really super in demand. He's not going to sign a new contract. He's got 1 year left. And yeah, for West Ham, it's a totally different situation. It's a harder deal to get done. So you'd think you want to focus on that more and get that across the line probably first if you're going to try and prioritize the deals. And with the fact that, Rice is a boyhood West Ham. Well, I know he played for Chelsea, but he's come through West Ham's ranks. I don't think he's going to rock the boat to leave. I think he wants to leave respectfully, and I think he just wants you guys to match whatever City are asking for. So, what West Ham are asking for. So, yeah, I think there's potential here for you guys to make a pig's ear of it, and I hope you don't. Only for the mere factor that I don't want City to just keep getting better as well. If it was us trying to gazump you, I'd be laughing with the rest of the United fans. But because it's City, City don't need Rice. Let's be real. There's not many players in world football that they really need to improve their team. They've really got a great team, and I know they're facing kind of a mini exodus. And Gundogan's left. There's talk of Cancelo. Obviously, he's probably going to leave. There's talk of Bernardo maybe leaving. There's talk of Mahrez maybe leaving. Both also potentially to Saudi. So I know that they're going to do a bit of a rebuild job, but bloody hell, they've got a really good team to rebuild on, and they've got one of the best managers in the world, probably in history, to help kind of to strategize that. So them getting Rice would be a hammer blow to the rest of the league, and I think for the fact that you guys are going up against them would really, really sting. Um, but yeah, it's funny to watch all the sides kind of talk about the transfer, because I've been seeing a lot of Arsenal fans kind of going back and forth with West Ham fans. There's a lot of kind of chat around West Ham. West Ham kind of want him to go a higher level than Arsenal. They're saying that Arsenal's kind of at the bottom end of the top six rung, and they've had one good season where they've performed really, really well, and they want their lad to go to a higher level than that. And obviously, Arsenal fans saying that West Ham are shite and all that kind of stuff, and that any level is a level above them. But it's been really interesting to see, and I think unfortunately, for all Arsenal fans, you've probably got at least another week or two left of this saga. I don't think it looks like ending, in the next couple of days. Touch wood, maybe it does, but it looks like that's going to probably be similar to the Mount deal and rumble on for a bit longer and keep us kind of getting more and more frustrated by it. But let's talk about Timber a little bit, because that's an interesting one. From a United fan's perspective, I'm a bit annoyed that it looks like you guys are going to come in and grab him and swoop for him, because we were obviously heavily linked for him last season before we got his defensive partner, Lisandro Martinez. What's your take on it? Because he's obviously a really versatile player. He can play right back, centre back, DM. Really young. Played with Van Dijk at the World Cup in the heart of Netherlands defence. What's your take on him?
He's a left field one that I didn't think we ever had a chance on. Like everything I've been hearing, if you play for Ajax, the number one team you want to go to right now is Man United, right? So all of them rumors that have been going around, I mean, I never really expected, nor did I actually give a lot of like actual credence to the rumors that we were going to get. It seems that it's taken, it's progressed a little bit since then, and now I'm starting to think maybe it's becoming real here. But again, he's a player that's in pretty decently high demand, right? I think Man United would bite their arms off to get him next season as well. So I think on that regard, we've already had our first bid rejected of 30 million or whatever we were going for. They're asking for 50 plus 5 or something like that. I've got similar worries there in the same way that I've got worries with Rice, right? Like 30 million to 50 million, if you look at it percentage wise, is quite a large gap. So maybe we can do something there though, because obviously Ajax and a lot of teams in the the Eredivisie are going to be in a different financial type of position. But I mean, I would love to have him at our team. I think the versatility there is huge. Couple that with the fact that I've seen rumors that Holding's going to leave. Come on, I'll take it all. Give me it all, right? So I would love to have him in our team. Versatility is the number one thing that we need right now. You look at Pep and the way that he's used really versatile players all over his squad to make big differences in crunch times. I would love to see that in our team, right? Someone that can play all those positions. He's also relatively young. Doesn't seem like he's going to be crazy, crazy expensive, given that 50 million these days is peanuts. I would love it. I mean, from your point of view, you must be a little disappointed, because I would imagine that he would have been like target number one for that position for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, obviously last season, apparently he was our number one centre-back target. And then there was the whole chat about, he spoke to Van Gaal, who was the Netherlands manager at the time, and he was like, don't go to United because you're not going to play. And if you want to get in my squad for the World Cup, you should stay at Ajax. And I don't know, that was a big rumour. Maybe he didn't say that, and that's just kind of like, to soften the blow for the fact that he rejected us. But I was quite disappointed, because watching a lot of kind of, Ajax content online, he was the hottest thing in that position in, the Eredivisie. And obviously working with Ten Hag before, it felt like, he'd be a great player to slot into his system at our club. But obviously we went for his defensive partner, who I can't complain, about. I think he's been, we've talked about it plenty of times on this pod. He's revolutionised our team and our defence. So I'm not disappointed that we didn't get him from that perspective. But secretly, in my heart of hearts, I did hope, with all the Kim Min Jae talk and the Disasi talk and all these other people we've been linked with at centre back, I kind of did hope that we were going to go back in for Timber. And I think I mentioned it on a previous episode that I thought that getting a younger centre back was a better profile than getting a Kim Min Jae or something that would demand playing week in week out to kind of cover for Varane. And I still think that, and I still think if we were able to go for him, I would do it because I think he's tailor made for the Premier League. He's fast. He's reads the game really well. He's plays in loads of positions, like you said. He's obviously tactically really astute for the fact that he's played at Ajax, who play a really attractive but intricate style of football. So I think if you do get him, you'll be getting a great player, and I think he'll slot into your system really well. And I think he'd work really well with both Saliba or Gabriel at the heart of your defence. And if if things really got bad and you lost Ben White or Tomiyasu at right back, he could slot in at right back without a problem. So I think it'd be a great signing for you guys. And apparently, the rumours, and the stuff online with all the ITKs are saying that he would like to go to Arsenal now. Of the options available, he would like to go to Arsenal above Bayern Munich, who are also interested in him. So yeah, I think it'll be a class signing for you guys. And I think if you do get him, I think your defence is really sitting pretty now with the news that Tierney's not really going to be leaving. I think you're pretty much set at centre back. The one weakness you had, which was that if you get a couple of injuries, Rob Holding comes in. That's gone now. If you get Timber, you don't really have to worry about that or the right back position. You've got someone who can come in and do a great job. So I think I love these are the kind of transfers I love. The ones that pop out of nowhere and you haven't heard anything about, and then it just seems like your club's kind of really progressing quickly to get the deal done. So I know there's a big gap in valuation at the moment, but stuff that I was reading, it looks like a middle ground of 40 plus 5 could get it done. So I think you're not a million miles away from getting that deal done. I do think there will be a domino effect though. How much if you do end up getting Rice, and the price keeps going up because there's a bit of a bidding war, maybe that will cause you some issues with Ajax because we saw last season they don't mess about, man. They're about their money. You know what I mean? They're selling a few players right now as well. They're going to sell their Mexican DM Edson Alvarez to Dortmund as well. So they get funny about selling more than one or two players a transfer window. That generally means the players that you want after that, the prices get 10, 15, 20 million added. Like what happened with us last season with Antony and Alessandro. I don't think it was only Man United tax. I think it was the fact they lost 5 or 6 players in one window, and they wanted to account for that by getting extra money. So yeah, man, let's see. I think that one he'll be nuts in it if that one got finished before the Rice deal as well. All these other transfers that are lower priority, you're able to get across the line, but not the Decky Rice one. But yeah, let's see, man. Who knows? Maybe next week there'll be some more interesting transfers for us to talk about as well that we haven't talked about today. Fingers crossed. We'll also have some more news about our takeover. Just doesn't look like that's going to end as well. We're talking about transfer sagas. Reading that news is the most depressing stuff I've ever done. I know we're going to talk about it in the future pods, but bloody hell, that takeover stuff is just sapping the life out of me.
In typical United fashion, it's dragging on.
Yeah, exactly. There was all this talk about trying to get it done before the end of a season, so we can have a crack at it with our new owners in the transfer window. And now they're saying, the decision is a few weeks away. And then once we get the decision, we'll still need, 6 to 8 weeks to get all of the FA, the Premier League, all of those guys to sign it off as well and do all the, fit and proper owners checks. So, I'm not sure we'll even have new owners by the time, the season has started. I think we might have them, while after the season's kicked off. So, yeah, that's chat for another day. But anyway, thanks, John. So we can wrap up the pod here. As usual, if you're listening on audio-only platforms, make sure you follow the Social Media Derby. If you can, leave a 5-star review or give us, some positive feedback. If you're watching on YouTube, please try and interact, like, comment, subscribe, share it with people. We'd love to get more people kind of, interacting with the show and tuning in to give us some positive, negative, or neutral feedback about the podcast to help this grow a little bit. But yeah, thanks a lot, Johns, and speak to you guys next week.
Cheers, Ant. Cheers, everyone.
See ya.